youth, I mean, there is an irony. We are talking about financial inclusion after 10 years or after 20 years. I mean, we're talking about digital finance or digital currency, something like that. But there are so many people, there are so many youth generations in developing country and in developed country as well, who are not aware about how to write check, right? How to spend money or how to plan for the future and how to control, I mean, how to repay their credit, all kind of stuff. So that inspired me to work on youth sector, youth and children sector. And then I started to work in collaboration with different colleges and schools. And then so what I do is I go to school and then I teach personal finance to the students. And then I give piggy bank and financial diary. The reason to give piggy bank is so that they can start they can start controlling their bad spending habit, and then they can control any amount. And then the reason to give financial diary is I found that in most of the part of Nepal, and not only in Nepal, but all over the world, people are not poor because people are poor not because of money, but they're poor because they are not handling money in a proper way. So there is no any practices that have been following by so many people in terms of tracking their income and expenses in their daily life. So I started to teach young generation on how they can control their spending habit or how they can control their money on daily basis, so that they can compare their income and then compare their expenses, and then they can control themselves not to buy heavy things, right? So in that way, I trained almost thousands of people, and then so that is what I love to do. And another part is in Asia, we can talk about India, we can talk about Bangladesh, we can talk about Pakistan, and so on. So there are so many microfinance. They're offering microcredit to the poor people, but at the same time, they're bringing poor people into the debt trap. So there is a duplication of loan and a lot of problems we can see in the ground. So I started to work with microfinance, and then I advise them how they can design a microfinance product, or how they can design a credit in such a way that people can get credit from microfinance institutions, and at the same time they can build their capability in terms of by doing some business, not only the spending money on the basic needs, spending money on some kind of good thing like investing. So yeah, Dr. Tarun said before, so there are few scope of financial literacy, so saving, remittance, spending, and all. So why you should so the reason I started to work with the reason that I started to work with the MFI is, so they are offering credit, but they are not offering trainings or skills to the poor people, to the poor, that, hey, this is the money that you can use in this sector, and then you can earn compound interest. So a lot of people, a lot of rural women, and then a lot of young generation, they don't know what is the meaning of compound interest. So I started with a microfinance institutions, and this is my journey so far. So I work with actually I worked with the Central Bank of Nepal as well, and then I helped them design the national curriculum of financial literacy, and then also the national strategy of financial inclusion. And then I worked with different bank and financial institutions, and then schools, and all over the world, And this is in conclusion, I want to tell you that so I'm in this path because of the people like Steve, who moved from one place to another place to educate people, and Dr. Tarun, who has extensive experience in his financial sector, but he's trying to do some groundwork. So these are the people to do the financial literacy work in Nepal.
Right. Okay, thank you for sharing. So, Mr. Stephen, like you have moved all the way to Varanasi. So, what have your personal experiences been with financial literacy, as well as your work as the program director at FinMango?
Hi to everyone who's tuned in. Hello from Varanasi. Hello from India. I just want to say thank you for having me on this panel. I'm so elated to be with, these legends. Just Tarun and Prakash, your work goes without even saying. And so I just want to say thank you for the things you said. I was taking notes as you guys were speaking. But yeah, for me, I'm on an Asian panel. I'm not Asian, huh? So me Indian na hiyon, like me on our Indian, and all my Indian friends. So आप लोग जानते हैं कि मेरा चेहरा मैं अफ्रीका से हूँ, मैं अमेरिका से हूँ, लेकिन मैं Indian or Asian, South Asian panel में हूँ. तो problem क्या है, दिक्कत क्या है? So I just want to say, I love Asia. I love, and I think I'm here, before I even start my story, I think I'm here because I truly believe that wealth and everything is starting to move from the west to the east as we are moving ahead. Like, I mean, most of the world's population is coming to the east, and most of like the wealth, as far as like even fintech, financial disruptions, it's all coming this way, and as we're looking at numbers, studies, I believe that some of the key leaders in thought, some of the key leaders in innovation will come from, Asia. And that's why, like, especially even when you look at Nepal, where Prakash is, you're looking at, their potential, their economic, financial potential with what they have, and even what they could do even with hydropower, with different things. And they're only using less than 50%, maybe 30% of their potential. You're looking at a great nation like India, and their potential is very great because of their numbers, because of their talent, because of their reach and community and their relationships. And you're looking at the potential that they're using. And then you're looking at different other countries, of course, China and different things. And so for me, I come from a perspective of, I am, a BHU, Banaras Hindu University, doing a master's and eventually PhD in just like the way that conflict studies, environmental conflict, different justice issues to minority groups or to groups in general, whether it's like women or minority groups are affected, and how the economy is affected by how policy development, how social work, type of organizations, whether it's NGOs, whether it's, people like Prakash, who's doing a lot of social entrepreneurship, how those services can help improve and bring us up, bring some of these minority groups up, make, financial inclusion a key component of policy development for governments, for different organizations, even like schools, different institutions of, of a country. And so for me, I believe that when we start to work towards these goals, like trying to work towards inclusivity of, whether it's like, because like I'm in UP, it's the largest state in India, and next to Bihar, the poorest, I believe, state in India. So when you look at the income per capita, in a home for these two states, it's very low compared to, you're looking at, different states and different places, especially in South India. So we have, this picture, right? Most of the population is in the north, but most of the wealth is in the south. And honestly, the south kind of carrying the weight, of the financial, of the GDP of a country. And so that's kind of my work. And even whether I'm in Africa, we're looking at like refugees, just looking at the migrant crisis in Africa, whether it's like wars, whether it's inequality, and how that affects an economy. And I believe that if we want to have actual growth in some of these continents, especially in some of the more developing countries, we have to look at the potential, like our potential, and then look at, what can we do what can we do about these things? How can we bring in, the people? I played sports growing up, and our coaches, or this mantra, they used to say, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? And so my work is trying to bring in, to bring awareness to people, working with FinMango. We're working with people who have this mindset that as a country, as a people, we're only as weak as our weakest link. So whenever I come from privilege, I come from a family that, like my parents work in government jobs. I have experience. I learned, I grew up with money. I grew up looking how my parents used money. I grew up being given money to spend. And so I did know, and I believe that what Tarun said is exactly right. Whether it's like savings, credit, bringing insurance, and those things were available to me. So my job is, how do we make these things available to the others? And I love what Prakash said in he made a really good quote that that I'm gonna quote him on. He said, there are no poor, meaning in these some of the poor, youth or populations. He said they're not poor because of money, but because of money management, and that's why he's doing these diaries and doing like the on-ground work. And I think that's really key because a lot of people don't think that. They think, hey, let's give them money, let's give them loan. And that's where financial literacy comes in. And that's why I really respect both of you in that you have high offices, you've traveled, you've done a lot of things, but you know that, there's a lot of the culture and the habits are not there yet. And that's where we come in to help these people. And so that's my journey, that's my passion. And that's why I'm working with these guys and wanting to see the world change, to be a better place for some of these minority groups.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I think your passion is infectious. So, Dr. Tarun, you had talked about the digital payments, and you feel that it plays a significant role in financial inclusion. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Arvind, couldn't get your question. Can you please repeat it? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. You had mentioned that digital payments play a pretty big role in financial inclusion. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So let me begin by saying, so passion works wonders. This is what my father used to say, right? If you have passion, you can really do wonderful things. And that has taken me very, very far off in my life, So whatever I do it with passion. Otherwise, I'm not there, right? So I have just taken this 3-word, with me always: passion works wonders, and that's where the concept of digitization also works. So today, as we speak, we have e-signatures, we have e-debit cards. We have e-Aadhaar in the country where every Indian has a unique identification, and all these three have been very efficiently brought in together by various innovative startups by young people in the country, and they're doing so wonderful job that today we don't need to actually interface with the people and do a transaction with them face to face, right? And all the data which we need to capture, it happens digitally. You just either they come on the app or they come on the chat box, or maximum we have some field officers which go on to the respective strategized planned locations and get the data filled. And there is no need for the paperwork. So that's why I'm just talking of a very basic digitization. And today, as we speak, we see that this digitization is also helping us to reach more closer to analyze the risk aspect of the customer, to the extent that we can also analyze as to who all within his paraphernalia of work we can lend to. So for example, yesterday I was hearing some microfinance experts and micropayment experts. They were saying that they have started lending to, for example, school teachers. So when they lend to school teachers, they not only look at the school teacher's salary, but they also look at how many children that school teacher has, whether the child is in the 8th standard or the child is in the 12th standard, because it all depends at how much of salary he or she will spend on that kind of education, on food and other things of these two children. And so what will be the pattern of spending? So how much we can lend, because how much will be spent. Similarly, they have started lending to school, because through these teachers they can analyze what kind of lending can be made to the institution, at what time intervals, whether the institution is punctual in lending to the teachers. Similarly, school gives so many vendors their payments. So I'm just talking of the ecosystem. See how an ecosystem is getting created. And this ecosystem is talking about inclusion and literacy, right? And similarly, you can imagine of so many, things happening. Similarly, the Kirana stores. We have millions and millions of Kirana stores today. Even as we talk of the mall culture, or the bigger malls, but still, as we Indians, go to a small shop and buy our daily needs. We prefer doing that, because if we go to a mall, we really go and spend unnecessarily on buying 10 other items. So this basic concept of digitization is really helping not only the entrepreneurs, I would say, also the people, and this is actually helping people like us on this platform who are trying to proliferate financial education to conduct camps for the migrants, for the people who cannot afford to go and shop on the malls, and to really help them manage their lives in terms of how much they need to save for future, how much they need to remit, what are the processes, what is good for them, what is bad for them. And all this can be also analyzed through digitization and can be individually fed back to the customers. So
All right.
I think digitization is something which is a boon, and technology is going to help us. And I think it's like, again, I will say, passion works wonders, and these innovators are really doing a great job in not only helping us, but helping the population and the needy in understanding the various patterns in the form of graphs, in the form of whatever formats we can explain them, and so many technologies have come up where there is no need for so though as a promulgator of digitization, I at times feel that there is a need to one to one see the customer to whom I'm lending, to
Right.
whom I need to explain the things and advantages of finance and how the finance has to be utilized. But then
Right.
that is one of the limitations. But then as far as we are able to reach as many people and help them in any of all these four products of literacy, I think we are doing our jobs well, and helping the community at large.
Right.
Over to you,
Right. Thank you, Dr. Tarun. On that note, I'd like to ask Mr. Prakash. He's also worked with a lot of students and engaging them. What kind of concepts do you feel are more important or interesting that you'd like to share today?
So thank you for asking, Arvind. So while working with the school children and working with the customer of microfinance, I realized that the world needs to understand the Abraham Maslow hierarchy theory of needs, because without, if they cannot understand the difference between needs and wants, they cannot use their money in a very proper way. So what I'm teaching to these people is like how they can differentiate their spending and how they can differentiate their savings. It's all about talking about Maslow hierarchy theory of needs. So it's a psychological theory, and it tells about a human desire in a pyramid structure. So in such a way, I always talk to the participant like how they can fulfill their first needs and then go to their wants, because because I've seen that people still don't know how to figure out their needs and wants. So I realize that people, because of the money, there is two issues. Because if they have money, they have financial freedom, and then if they don't have money, there is some kind of disruption, or what I would say, like there is some kind of conflict in their family. So I have seen that when people have money, they have more freedom, and then they realize that what to do first, and then they realize that what is their needs and wants, and also they are very aware about their immediate attention. And those people who have money, they have a good sense of humor, like how to buy things, or how to prefer goods and services in their daily life. So that is one part. And the another part is there are people who don't understand financial goals, financial planning, or the as I said, like Maslow hierarchy theory of needs. So we need to teach those people like how they can segregate the needs and wants, and then how they can plan for future, how they can maintain their financial goal. Because I have seen that in developing country, and also in also developed country, there is some limited saving, but that is already planned for something expenses related to marriage or related to their just to cover their daily expenses. So that is not going to work in the future. So we need to talk about how they can maintain, or how they can accumulate their saving for the future, and then they can earn some compound interest in the later on. And then in that way, we need to talk about financial literacy. That is one thing. And the another thing is, so as I said before, so Maslow hierarchy theory is the best thing that we should educating people from this time, like this pandemic. So this is the right time to talk about how they can control their spending habit, and then how we can encourage people to go to different shopping malls to do the shopping, and then they can understand the price and then the service of goods like that, right? So I learned that these are the most important thing that we need to educate people. That is, one thing is money cost to freedom, and the another thing is money is not equals to relationship, because I have seen that because of money there is a lot of people are fighting each other. So the takeaway that I got from my work is there is a difference between money and the relationship, and then there's a close gap. There is a close gap between money and financial freedom. That is one thing. And the another thing is that we need to educate people to do the good spending habit, and to promote the good spending habit. That is another thing that I learned from my work. And this is what I always wanted to train the people as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Mr. Prakash, for your insight. Moving on to Mr. Stephen, you had talked about how minority groups need to be financially included and to be financially literate. What do you think are the impacts when they do become independent or literate?
Like I said, it's all onto increasing the potential, right? It's like looking at the potential, because I think a lot of people, the thing is I think that as we get development, even in my studies, we don't understand how development affects everything. Mm-hmm. So in my course of study and in the field of work I do, we're looking at how when you look at developed countries, you have less violence. I mean, it doesn't look good for the US right now. You have riots are breaking out everything. But generally in development, at least you have a system, right? We're talking about infrastructure, and I think that's even what Tarun was talking about earlier, which I really love that tagline, passion works wonders. And I believe that. I think that, we should really try to recruit and try to encourage youth, or try to harness. And I think it's what this event is doing. It's harnessing all the thought leaders in different regions who are passionate, because no one is getting paid for this, who are passionate for this, and hopefully connecting and networking so we can start working towards raising up more people who are passionate about creating this, a more inclusive world. Because most people, especially if they've never seen it, because I truly believe seeing is believing, right? If you've traveled like to Singapore, and you see the system, you start asking yourself questions. How do the different religious rights work together? How do you, of course there's different abuses, whether you go to Dubai or some of these other places, when you go to the slums, there's different abuse of the workers, especially from Asia. There's racism, because a lot of the Indians or South Asians, right, they're the ones they're carrying the economy of Dubai, right? And so when you're looking at the economy of Dubai right now, it's in shambles, right? Because as people were going back, as they were being really rude and very honestly racist towards their, Asian co-workers and people who are building their lives in that country. Because of course, as you know, things like you can be a citizen, right? You can live in the country, you can help the economy, you can build it, but you can't per se take in the full, blessings of the country. And I think those kind of things is what I'm looking at in my field of study. How do we bring equality? How do we bring inclusive, policy from the government that is not discriminatory? Because I believe that the thing is this, we might look at the low class or low socioeconomic people, but it really starts up top, because there's people who are you know, from different countries, you know, whether it's in Dubai, whether it's in Singapore, and they're still discriminated and they have wealth in the bank, right? It's discrimination doesn't happen because you have money. And I think that's kind of like the confusion people have sometimes. It's like, hey, let's make people rich and all of a sudden the problems go away. But I think that's where like having this passion, right? Having this passion to include people, having this passion to like bring up the issues, having this passion to have inclusivity is very important to bring people up. And I think that when you have this passion, not just for wealth, right? And I think that's kind of even what Tarun was talking about with digitalizing everything. What it's doing, it's actually, I believe it's love. I believe it's loving the poor, because when you digitalize everything, that means that the people, especially in my district here in Varanasi or in UP, they don't want to spend 20 more rupees or 30 more rupees or 50 more rupees to travel somewhere, to, you know, walk in this like, you know, 46, you know, degree heat. You know, everything when it's in your mobile, you know, because like everyone is on their mobile, right? No matter if they're poor. That's one thing I've seen. Everyone has a smartphone here, you know? And so when they have a phone, you know, internet is really cheap here. You digitalize everything. That's actually, I think those kind of policies, like working towards this end, it's going to actually help us to, as institutions, to learn about, you know, our customer like spending habits. So it's going to help us with even Prakash's like notion of, you know, like whether it's like a diary, right? Because most people are not, okay, for instance, I was in Delhi, in the slums in Delhi working, because I have a medical background, and most of the people couldn't even write their names. They don't know how to write their names. They know their name, but when you tell them, hey, to sign, they can't sign. When you tell them to write their name, they can't do it. Their children do it for them. And so there's like security we're talking about. There's like, you know, illiteracy that we're talking about, not just financial, but, you know, literacy, like language and writing. And so when you're looking at these issues, then we have to look at how do we help these people to digitalize everything, in a sense, like to make it easy for them to save money, but also to learn their spending habits, to Prakash's point, so they can see how much they've spent that month because they have a digital wallet, they have, you know, different services, and then also to work with government agencies to bring regulation, because some of these fintechs don't have regulation because the government is still trying to catch up with all the fintechs that are coming out with digitalization, as well as looking at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I believe Prakash is right, because right now we're in a pressure point. We're in a pressure cooker where now all the bad habits are coming to surface. You know, your savings habits, did you have credit, did you have insurance, did you have, you know, all these things saved up? If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're suffering right now. If you're laid off jobs. And so creating this idea of like needs and wants, and training people to actually live for the future, plan for the future, have a savings account and things like that. And I believe this will actually help us. This is like the goal, I think. It's development. It's helping the people who are in the low socioeconomic classes come up. You know, it's helping people to not judge people or to have like these policies that discriminate. You know, when people are actually working hard, you know, doing what they're doing to, you know, help the economies. So that's also, you know, you bring in government agencies, and that's where it gets funny. But, you know, I believe those things really do matter.
Right. Thank you. We do have to wind up soon, but I think through the discussion about financial literacy and inclusion with these gentlemen, I think the one common factor that they all talked about is passion. And I think it's their deep-rooted sense of passion that they've been able to bring about the change that they've worked so hard on. I'd like to thank all of them for joining today. They've provided insights, and it's just a pity that we don't have more time to talk and discuss. But you can definitely check them out. You can try to follow them on LinkedIn, and I'm sure they'll be able to help you. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining today. I know you've taken time out of your busy days. Mr. Prakash is staying up late in Canada right now just to be here with us.
Thank you, Arvind. Actually, there are two questions raised by our participants. So I replied one question. So there is another question about accountability. So I'll just give an answer, and then maybe Tarun has a good answer for these questions. So while talking about accountability, we need to talk about what is the role of bank and financial institutions. like we say, like there's a lot of political awareness in different part of the world, but we cannot say there is banking awareness in different part of the world, right? So in that way, we can raise our awareness. So when a bank wants to establish the branch in the near area or some other part of the world or some other part of the region, first they need to educate people on like how, why they are operating there, why they are going to operate there, or how they are giving the benefit to the needy people. In that way, banks should understand the needs, and banks should start the campaign to educate people on how they can come to the banking service. Still, there are a lot of people who doesn't want to come bank because they think that bank is for only for rich people, right? So we need to, bank has the responsibility to organize the financial literacy sessions whenever they think to reopen, or I mean, when they think to establish the branch in different part of the country. So that is one thing. The another thing is there is always a demand side gap and supply side gap. So we should not blame only bank and financial institutions, but we should also think about why. I mean, what are the things that I have been following to just to maintain my personal finance, or what are the things that I should go to bank to understand the topic, right? So like there are so many people, educated people who don't know how to deposit money. They don't know what is vault system in the banking sector. So it's the responsibility of the educated people as well. So in that way, we can bridge the gap between demand side and the supply side. So that's my answer for the questions. So maybe Dr. Tarun has the perfect answer for this.
No. So thank you, Prakash. Just wanted to add, my thesis, I just wanted to talk because it's really very relevant here. So in my research, what I have done is that, I have found out the three factors which needs to be identified by the bankers, the policymakers, the researchers, and the central government. So, so one is saying the products, the kind of products which that particular section of the, so I have divided, let's say, so state-wise, I have done the study. So I'm saying which states need products emphasis, which states requires technology emphasis, which state requires emphasis on the banking and financial services. So on these three bases, I have developed a mathematical model on which, when we apply that model, state-wise, we have done comparisons of various years. We come to know that this state requires education on products so that people can, so apart from other education, need products. In certain areas, there is a need for increasing the bandwidth. There's a need for technology education as to how to utilize, what are the apps which can be utilized by these people. And maybe another state, it would be more about actually having a physical banking system, or maybe innovative digitized innovative organizations coming up. So on this basis, I think that would be more better to address this question. I just wanted to add it to what Prakash said.
Right.
That's awesome.
Okay, thank you so much again. Sorry to have to cut you guys short like this. If there are any further questions, we'll reach out to you and we can start a dialogue that way. Once again, I'd like to thank the panelists for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you,
Arvind.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Arvind, for your time.
FinMango team.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking
Thank you.
forward to seeing you in the future as well.